Welcome to today's video. Like, share, and subscribe. Questions? Comments? Drop me a line and let's get right into it. The question of whether I eat unclean foods stuck with me after a conversation with my Muslim co-worker, Ibrahim, in Tromsø. I told him that as Christians, we believe that we are no longer bound by the food laws in the Old Testament due to grace. I also mentioned Peter's vision in the book of Acts as confirmation that we are free to eat whatever we choose. However, Ibrahim challenged my interpretation, pointing out that according to the text, Peter's vision was about the acceptance of Gentiles, not about food. So when I got home and opened my Bible, I was surprised to find that Ibrahim was right. The vision Peter had was actually about accepting Gentiles, not about food. It was in black and white in the text, and a couple of verses were below the vision. I always thought it was about food because this was what I had been told in countless sermons, so I had never checked for myself. But wasn't there a passage in the Gospels where Jesus said something like, "So he made all foods clean," when talking about what goes into the stomach? I opened a couple of different translations, and to my surprise, they all had a little footnote that said the sentence, "So he made all foods clean," was added to the manuscripts in about the year 400. This blew my mind. Someone had added this to the Gospels. But I'd been told in countless sermons how this one sentence was the inspired word of God, proving, together with Peter's vision, how the food laws no longer applied to us. So I opened up one of my many theology books to find the meaning behind Jesus' words in this gospel passage, and to my surprise, Jesus is using a lot of Hebrew idioms here that refer to teachings, not food. So the message of Jesus' teachings here is, be careful by what teaching you listen to, because it can make you unclean. When I had no scriptural foundation in the New Testament to believe the food laws no longer applied to us, it was easy to choose to eat only biblical, clean foods from now on. I had to give up some cherished food traditions due to dietary restrictions in the Bible. For example, I had to stop eating blood and pork sausage, which I had enjoyed since childhood. Additionally, I had to avoid other foods such as tallow fat, thigh vein with shank, the flesh of a beast that had died of itself or was torn, winged insects, things that swarm in water, vermin of the earth, things that creep upon the earth, worms, vultures, eagles, owls, rabbits, kangaroos, crustaceans, mollusks, and water mammals. Giving up crustaceans was easy. I never liked them anyway. And I have to admit, after I started eating kosher, I felt healthier than before. I did run across the argument that it is legalism to refuse to eat pork or crustaceans, or that it was impossible for us to live by such a law because of the sin nature. I never understood that argument because I knew several people who had no problem giving up certain foods if their doctors ordered them to do so for health issues. So why would it be so impossible to do so when God gave a similar order? And why would it be legalism to avoid eating pork or crustaceans when most of them who claimed legalism would never have eaten a worm or insects? I also learned that if I gathered eggs from a bird's nest, I had to do so when the mother was not looking, and the meat I ate had to be slaughtered in a specific way. This posed a problem for me because living in Norway, the closest kosher butcher would be in Amsterdam, Holland. Of course, if I were rich, I could have meat imported, but I am not wealthy, so that would be out of the question. Then I saw something interesting in the Torah. If you have two conflicting commandments, it would be a sin not to sin, meaning it would be wrong of me to obey the commandment, which was of lesser importance. The Torah is clear on one thing. Those who can't feed their families and care for them are worse than an unbeliever. So it is more important to ensure my family has food on the table than to ensure it is slaughtered correctly. This solved my problem because until I have access to a kosher slaughter in Norway, or I can afford to import meat, I am doing the right thing by not obeying this commandment. But then I came across the commandment not to eat flesh and milk together, commonly called the cheeseburger commandment. I knew this was usually interpreted as meaning not to eat flesh and milk together. However, since I believe I am not the original recipient of the Bible, I had to learn how the first recipients would have understood this. They would have understood this not as don't eat flesh and milk together, but as a commandment telling them not to boil a kid in its mother's milk. The reason for this commandment is twofold. One is because the tribes surrounding Israel at the time used to do this as a fertility ritual, and the other is because it would be cruel to animals to do so. This was all the commandments concerning the food laws in the Old Testament. Remember to share, like, and subscribe to questions. Comments? Drop me a line, and until next time, God bless.